My name is Lydia Campbell, 31 years old, and tonight I learned that love doesn't always die in an argument. Sometimes it dies in a whisper with 7 quiet words that burned everything down. This is who I am, take it or leave it. That's what Larry Wells said to me, calmly, carelessly, like truth was optional and I was the problem for asking for it. For years, I told myself we were solid. 4 years together, 2 years living under one roof. We shared groceries, dreams, passwords, toothbrush space, everything that makes a life. But somewhere between all that sharing, I stopped realizing how much of me was being stolen. The lies started small. Larry said he was working late, but his coworker would post photos of their team dinner at 6 p.m. He said he'd paid the electric bill, but the overdue notice came anyway. He said he couldn't afford his half of rent, then bragged to his friends about buying new golf clubs. Each time I wanted to believe him. I told myself he was stressed, distracted, tired. I blamed work, bad timing, anything but him. Because when you love someone, your first instinct isn't to doubt them. It's to doubt yourself. But eventually, even love runs out of excuses. About 6 months ago, I started writing things down. Receipts, screenshots, notes about what he said versus what actually happened. I didn't plan to use them. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't imagining it, that the quiet erosion of truth wasn't all in my head. Then came the moment everything cracked. It was a Sunday barbecue at my cousin's house. We were all laughing, grilling, pretending everything was fine. Then my cousin leaned over and said, "Congratulations, Lydia. That ring is stunning." "Ring?" I asked. She showed me a photo on her phone, a close-up of a diamond engagement ring, with my hand supposedly wearing it. It wasn't mine. It wasn't real. It was a stock photo. Larry had told people we were engaged. He sent them fake photos. He built an entire story around it. When I confronted him that night, he didn't even flinch. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said. "Everyone exaggerates a little. It's not a big deal." "You lied, Larry. You told my family we were engaged." He shrugged. "So what?" It made them happy. Isn't that what matters? I remember staring at him, waiting for him to realize what he'd done, waiting for a trace of guilt. But all I saw was that familiar smug calm, the one that said, "You'll forgive me like always." When I showed him proof the photo was fake, he turned it back on me. "You've been snooping again." "That's not healthy, Lydia. You're getting paranoid." Then came the words that changed everything. "This is who I am. I embellish sometimes. So what? Either take it or leave it." He said it like it was a challenge, like he was daring me to stay. So I said very quietly, "I'll leave it." He laughed, actually laughed. "You won't. You need me. You can't afford this place alone." He slung his overnight bag over his shoulder and stormed out saying he'd be gone for a work conference. What he didn't know was that I could afford the apartment just fine. The lease was in my name. It always had been. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a single lamp on the silence thick enough to choke me. I stared at a blank sheet of paper for a long time before I started writing. "Larry, you asked me to take it or leave it. I've chosen to leave it. Your belongings are in the bedroom. You have 30 days to find a new place as per state law. Your share of rent is due by the 5th. The fake engagement photos you sent your family are saved on the kitchen tablet in case you need them for your next story. Lydia." I folded the note, placed it beside his favorite coffee mug, and looked around the apartment one last time. The next morning, I called in 2 vacation days and rented a small storage unit. Then I started packing, not in anger, but in eerie calm. Half the plates, half the towels, half the coffee pods, even half of the framed photos, the ones we'd split the cost on. His clothes, his laptop, his watch collection untouched. I didn't want anything of his. I didn't want anything that lied to me. By the 3rd day, the apartment felt lighter. Not just physically, but spiritually, like I'd exorcised something toxic from the walls. Before locking the door for the last time, I walked through the room slowly. There were faint square outlines on the walls where our pictures used to hang. One above the couch was from our 2nd anniversary, me, in a red dress, him holding my hand. We looked so happy. I touched the mark left by that frame and whispered, "You'll learn the meaning of empty." I took one last breath of that stale air, picked up my keys, and left. At my sister Danielle's apartment, I finally turned my phone back on. 32 missed calls, 21 messages. "Where's the TV?" "This isn't funny. Call me back, Lydia. You're overreacting. Please, I'm sorry. Let's talk." The screen kept lighting up, desperate, angry, then pleading. I set it face down on the counter and walked away, because I'd finally realized something. He wasn't calling because he loved me. He was calling because he'd lost control. And for men like Larry, losing control is worse than losing love. He laughed when I said I'd leave. He didn't realize that by the time he came back from his conference, half our apartment would be gone. The morning after Larry left the apartment felt eerily still. No music humming from his speakers, no scent of his cologne mixing with coffee, just quiet, thick, honest quiet. For the first time in 2 years, I could hear the sound of the refrigerator running, the hum of something that never lies. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the folded note I'd left on the counter the night before. My handwriting looked steadier than I felt. This wasn't revenge, it was release. When people talk about heartbreak, they describe tears, screaming, begging. Mine was different. Mine looked like 2 suitcases, a checklist, and a Google search for storage units near me. I took the next 2 days off work and got to work quietly, efficiently, like I was undoing a life one item at a time. The lease was in my name alone. Larry never bothered to renew it last spring. He just assumed I'd taken care of it, like I took care of everything else. I remember him saying, "You're good with details. I'd just mess it up anyway." So yes, he was technically a month-to-month occupant, and now he was out. I started packing at sunrise. The air was cool, calm, too calm for what I was about to do. I packed my half of everything. Half the plate set, half the glasses, 4 of 8 mugs. I even divided the coffee pods evenly, not because I cared, but because I wanted everything to be precise, legal, and fair. Fair, a word he'd twisted 100 times. While taping the second box, I found an old photograph our first Christmas together. He had his arm around me, his smile, wide eyes, warm. I looked at that picture for a long time before slipping it into the donation pile. The truth was that man didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. By afternoon, I was drenched in sweat, but strangely calm. The more I packed, the more my chest loosened. Every sealed box felt like an exhale. On the second night, I slept on the couch. The bed still smelled like him. I remember staring at the ceiling and whispering, "I'm not angry, I'm just done." When I woke up, sunlight poured through the blinds like a soft apology. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen counter, and looked around. Half the apartment was empty now, the shelves, the wall. Where his gaming setup used to be the spot where he'd keep his shoes piled instead of putting them away. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to clean up after him. By noon, the place was ready. His things were neatly folded, organized in the bedroom. I didn't touch anything personal, not his laptop, not his watch, not the cheap silver necklace I once thought was a sign of love. On the counter next to his favorite mug sat the note, the same one that started this quiet war. I took one last walk through the apartment. Each room had a ghost, a sound, a memory, a sentence that used to mean something. The hallway still echoed with the last fight we had. "You're being dramatic, Lydia. Why can't you just relax?" I smiled faintly. Relaxation finally looked like an empty apartment. Before locking up, I took a photo of the living room, half bare, half full, like a reflection of me, what he took, what I kept, and what I was rebuilding. Then I placed my keys on the counter right beside the note. Outside, the sun hit my face. It felt like a small reward. I drove across town to my sister Danielle's apartment. She opened the door in her pajamas, eyes wide. "Lydia." "What's going on?" "I didn't cry. I just said I'm done." Danielle hugged me without asking another question. That's the thing about sisters, they can read the silence better than the words. Over the next few hours, I started receiving the messages. At first, they were short. "Where's the TV? Why did you take my stuff? This isn't funny." Then the tone changed. "You can't just evict me. I'll call the cops. You're overreacting. Come home. Let's talk." By midnight, they turned to pleading. "Please, Lydia, I made a mistake. I can't sleep. Just answer me." I didn't. Danielle saw me glance at my phone and asked, "You want me to block him?" I shook my head. "No. I want to see the kind of man he becomes when no one's watching." The next morning, while sipping coffee on Danielle's balcony, my phone buzzed again. But this time it wasn't Larry. It was his boss. Apparently, Larry had missed work. The conference he told me about didn't exist. His boss sounded confused. "We don't have any company events this month," he said. So I forwarded the fake email Larry had sent me, the one he'd doctored with their letterhead. The line went silent. Then his boss muttered, "Thank you for letting me know." That was the moment I realized something important. I didn't need revenge. The truth was already doing the job for me. That night, I sat on Danielle's couch, scrolling through my phone, watching the unread messages pile up. There was a strange satisfaction in silence, a peace Larry would never understand. I didn't delete our photos. I didn't block his number. I didn't erase the past. I simply stopped feeding it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight back. It's to disappear so quietly that the other person hears their own echo instead. By the time he realized I was gone, his conference would be over, and he'd come home not to me, but to a note, an empty closet, and the sound of the truth finally settling in. By the third night, the notifications wouldn't stop. 67 missed calls, over 100 messages. Larry's name filled my screen like static buzzing, vibrating desperate. The man who once mocked me for needing closure now couldn't handle silence. I didn't answer, I just watched. The messages changed tone with every hour: confusion, denial, fury, then something almost like regret. "Where's the TV? You're acting insane, Lydia. You can't just take off like this. Baby, please, I'm sorry. Let's talk." Then came the voice messages, shaky breathing, crying, swearing. He accused me of abandoning him, of making him look bad. I should have felt angry, but all I felt was detached, like I was watching someone else's life unravel through a cracked phone screen. Danielle peeked over my shoulder. "Are you seriously still reading those?" she asked. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Documentation." See, I'd learned something during those last few months with him. People like Larry rewrite history when you stop participating in their story. And I wasn't about to let him narrate my truth. That night around 11 p.m., he showed up at Danielle's building. Her phone buzzed, first the intercom. I froze. She glanced at the small screen. His face appeared blurry under the porch light, eyes wild, phone in hand. Danielle looked at me. "Do you want me to call security?" I nodded. She pressed the button, her voice calm and cold. "You need to leave Larry, right now." He started shouting, "She's my girlfriend. She stole my things. I just want to talk." The guard arrived within minutes. Larry backed off, muttering something about calling the cops. When the door shut and his voice faded, I realized my hands were trembling. Danielle touched my shoulder. "He's losing control. That's good. Means he's scared." And she was right, because men like Larry don't panic when they lose love. They panic when they lose access. The next morning, my phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't him. It was my mother. "Lydia," she said in that cautious tone mothers use when they're afraid you've done something unladylike. "I just got a call from Larry. He said you threw him out without warning. Is that true?" I sighed. "Did he also tell you he faked an engagement and forged company documents?" She paused. "What?" I explained. Calmly, factually. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment, then said softly, "Good. You did the right thing. Don't answer his calls." That surprised me. My mom had always liked him polite, well-spoken, clean-cut, the kind of man who charmed parents, first partners later. But even she knew the difference between heartache and danger. Later that afternoon, I got another unexpected call, this time from his boss. "Hi, Ms. Campbell. I'm sorry to bother you, but Larry listed you as his emergency contact. We're just checking in. He hasn't shown up for work or returned calls." I felt something click into place. "Didn't he tell you he was at the conference this week?" I asked carefully. "Conference," the man repeated. "We don't have any conferences this month." I closed my eyes. Of course, Larry's lies had finally crossed into territory he couldn't control the professional world. "I can forward you the email he sent me about it," I said. "The one with your company's logo." The pause on the other end told me everything. That would be helpful. "Thank you," his boss said, tone stiff. "We'll handle it from here." When I hung up, I felt a strange calmness. Not victory, something quieter, like the air before rain. That evening, Larry's tone shifted again. "Did you call my work?" "You're trying to ruin my life. This is abusive, Lydia. You always twist things. You'll regret this. I swear you will." Then 5 minutes later, "Please, I just need you. I'll fix it. I promise." The same loop I'd lived in for years. Lies, confrontation, guilt, love bombing, repeat. Only this time I wasn't in it anymore. That night, Julian, Danielle's boyfriend, who worked as a paralegal, helped me draft a formal notice. 30 days written notice to vacate sent by certified mail. Everything was clean, legal, undeniable. Danielle glanced at me while I sealed the envelope. "You're really doing this, huh?" I nodded. He said, "Take it or leave it. I'm just honoring his choice." When I went to bed that night, the phone kept lighting up every few minutes. The words blurred into white noise. At 2 a.m., I finally muted him, but not before reading one last message. "You're nothing without me." I stared at it for a long time. Then I smiled almost sadly and whispered to the dark, "Then I guess it's time to find out." By morning, I'd already contacted the leasing office to update them on the situation. The property manager sounded sympathetic but firm. "Don't worry, Ms. Campbell. You're the only one on the lease. We'll note his name as an unauthorized occupant." When I hung up, I opened my curtains. Sunlight spilled across the floor, warm, unbothered, indifferent to all the noise Larry had made. I made myself coffee, sat down, and let the stillness wash over me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anxious about what lie might come next, because there was no one left to lie to me. When silence becomes your safest sound, you know you've finally escaped the storm. It started with a knock, not gentle, not polite, 3 sharp hits against the apartment door, each one vibrating through the hallway like a warning. I didn't move at first. Danielle and Julian were still asleep, and for a second I told myself I'd imagined it. Then came the second round, louder this time. I stood hard hammering and peered through the peephole. Larry. He looked different. Not the calm, confident man who once prided himself on being in control. His shirt was wrinkled hair a mess, eyes darting between my door and the hallway camera. I whispered to myself he wouldn't dare. Then he tried his key, the one I'd already changed. Metal scraped against metal. Then the jiggling. Then the sound of his foot slamming against the bottom of the door. I stepped back, dialing security. "Hi, this is Lydia Campbell. My ex-boyfriend is attempting to break into my apartment." The guard's tone sharpened instantly. "Stay inside. We're on our way." It took less than 5 minutes for them to arrive. Through the peephole, I watched Larry's bravado collapse as 2 uniformed officers flanked him. He gestured wildly, voice raised. "She locked me out of my own place. All my stuff is in there." The officer checked his ID. "Sir, do you have proof of residence?" "A lease, a bill with this address." He froze. She handled all of that." "Then you'll need to leave," the officer said, firm. "If you don't have legal documentation, this isn't your residence." Larry turned red. "You don't understand. She's insane. She's controlling, manipulative. Sir, the officer interrupted, calm but icy. "If you don't leave now, you'll be charged with attempted break-in and disturbing the peace." Silence. Then finally the sound of his retreating footsteps. I didn't realize I was shaking until Danielle's hand landed on my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded, but my voice cracked. "He's unraveling." Julian looked up from the legal papers we'd prepared. That's what happens when lies lose their audience. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak sounded like another knock. Every passing car made me flinch. It's strange how fear can linger even after you win. The next morning I woke to chaos, not at my door this time, but online. Larry had gone public. On Facebook, it was a long, self-pitying post titled, "The Truth About What Happened." He claimed I'd financially abused him, used him for money, and left him homeless without warning. The comments section was a battlefield. Half the people, mostly his coworkers and drinking buddies, expressed outrage and pity. The other half, they weren't buying it. One friend commented, "Didn't you tell us she quit her job to take care of you because she didn't?" Another wrote, "Wait, weren't you on a work conference that didn't exist?" I couldn't stop scrolling. Every thread unraveled another piece of his performance. Danielle laughed, shaking her head. "He's self-destructing in real time." Still seeing my name smeared like that hit something deep. You can prepare yourself for betrayal, but not for public distortion, not for someone you once loved, turning your story into a weapon. By evening, my phone buzzed again, an unknown number. I let it ring, but curiosity got the better of me. "Ms. Campbell." The voice was formal, apologetic. "This is Mr. Porter, Larry's supervisor." I froze. "Yes. I just wanted to thank you for forwarding that email. It helped us confirm several discrepancies." "Discrepancies," I repeated softly. He cleared his throat. "Falsified reports. Expense claims for client dinners that never occurred. Around $3,000 worth." For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or feel sick. "Will there be consequences?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "He's been terminated effective immediately. The company's reviewing whether to press charges." After the call ended, I sat there in stunned silence. Larry had always acted untouchable, too charming, too clever to ever face fallout. But now his carefully built facade was cracking from every direction. That night, I received one last message from him. "You told my boss. You've ruined my life. Are you happy now?" I stared at it, thumb hovering over the keyboard. For a second, part of me wanted to explain, to remind him that all I did was stop protecting him from the truth. Instead, I typed 3 words. "Actions have consequences." Then I hit send and blocked his number. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. But peace never lasts long when someone's built their identity on manipulation. 3 days later, his mother called. Her voice was tight, trembling with fury. "You had no right to throw my son out. He told me you humiliated him, left him with nothing." I closed my eyes. "Ma'am, with all due respect, your son had 30 days' notice. I even packed his things neatly." She scoffed. "He shouldn't have to pay rent. He gave you the best years of his life." I let out a quiet laugh. He's 29, not 80. And if lying, cheating, and stealing count as gifts, then yes, he gave generously. She hung up on me. When I told Danielle, she just said, "Looks like denial runs in the family." Later that week, Larry tried again, this time showing up at the leasing office demanding they remove me from the contract because I had abandoned the property. The manager called me immediately, half amused, half concerned. Ms. Campbell. She said he tried to convince us he was the primary tenant. I showed him your lease. He left pretty fast. I thanked her, but as soon as I hung up, I felt that same old chill crawl down my spine. Larry wasn't giving up. He was escalating. He'd already lost control of the narrative, his job, and his home. The only thing left for him to attack was me. But I was ready now. I had proof, witnesses, documents, and peace on my side. And while he was busy trying to burn everything down, I was quietly rebuilding my life, one honest breath at a time. When someone's world is built on lies, the truth doesn't just destroy them. It unmasks them completely. Larry's world was falling apart, and when men like him start sinking, they don't drown quietly. They drag everyone down with them. By the end of that week, he had nowhere left to go. Fired from his job, evicted from my apartment, exposed online. His friends were starting to pull away, and even his family had stopped defending him publicly. But Larry wasn't the type to accept defeat. He needed a stage, and he found one. It was a Saturday morning when my phone buzzed, not with his name this time, but with an alert from the Ring camera I'd installed at the apartment before leaving. When I opened the feed, my stomach twisted. There, he was standing at the front door again, this time with a rented U-Haul and 4 men I didn't recognize. One of them wore a security vest. The others looked like movers. They were unloading dollies, looking confused. Larry was gesturing toward my apartment, waving papers, his voice echoing through the mic. "She's locked me out. She stole my stuff. I have a legal right to get my things back." My heart pounded. He'd told them a story, probably the same kind of twisted tale he'd fed everyone else. I called Julian immediately. He didn't hesitate. "Stay put. I'll go meet them. We have the doorbell footage and the legal notice. He won't get far." Within 20 minutes, Julian was at the apartment complex, phone recording everything. Later, he told me what happened. When the movers confronted Larry, asking to see proof he lived there, he produced nothing. No lease, no ID with the address. Just that manic confidence that used to fool people. Julian stepped forward, calm but firm. "I'm her legal representative. You're attempting an unlawful entry." One of the movers frowned. "Wait, you said she was holding your stuff hostage." Larry's eyes darted. She's crazy." Julian showed them the footage from 2 weeks prior, Larry kicking the door, police escorting him off the property. Then he showed them the signed letter, giving Larry 30 days to collect his belongings. The men exchanged looks. The one in the vest shook his head. "Lady, you didn't tell us that." Larry's face turned crimson. "You don't understand, she's dangerous." But the movers were already stepping back. One of them, a tall guy with a body cam clipped to his chest, pointed at him. "You lied to us. You said she was violent, that she had your stuff locked up illegally. This is fraud, man. We're not part of this." And just like that, they left him there alone on the curb, shouting at no one. When Julian sent me the clip later, I watched it twice. The irony was poetic. Larry, the man who used to love being the center of attention, now screaming to an empty parking lot while everyone walked away. But the story didn't end there. A few hours later, my leasing manager called again. "Ms. Campbell, you'll want to see this." Apparently, Larry had gone around knocking on neighbors' doors, asking if anyone had seen me or if they'd let him inside. When they refused, he started yelling, claiming I had stolen his property and ruined his life. Security escorted him out again. That night, I received an unexpected email from one of the movers, the guy with the body cam. He'd found my name on a box label and tracked me down. Attached was the footage from inside the truck before they'd arrived. I pressed play. Larry's voice came through, agitated and manipulative. "She's abusive. She hit me once. I have a restraining order but forgot it at home. I just need to get my stuff back." The men asked if they needed to call the police first. Larry replied, No, she's harmless when she's scared. Just act confident. I'll give you an extra 100 each if you get me the TV and laptop." I froze. The man continued recording as Larry rehearsed lies like lines from a script. When it ended, I felt my chest tighten. Not from fear anymore, from confirmation. Everything I doubted about him was right there on tape. Julian smiled when I showed him the file. That, he said, is gold. If he tries anything legal, he's done. 2 days later, 3 of Larry's friends showed up at my apartment. They knocked politely, holding empty boxes. When I opened the door, they looked startled to see me calm, not angry. We're here for Larry's things," one said, almost apologetically. "Of course," I replied. "They're all packed and ready." I led them to the neatly stacked boxes, each labeled and inventoried. Fragile items are wrapped. Electronics are tested. Everything that's his is accounted for. They looked around, clearly expecting chaos. One of them muttered, "He said you trashed everything." I smiled faintly. He lies. It's what he does best. They exchanged uneasy glances. One woman, Amy, finally asked, "You know he still loves you, right? He just makes mistakes." I turned to her. Lying about being engaged isn't a mistake. Forging company documents isn't a mistake. Spending rent money on himself isn't a mistake. Those are choices, and I've stopped paying for them. Amy lowered her eyes. He didn't tell us all that. Of course not, I said softly. The truth doesn't get him sympathy. When they left, the last box gone, the door finally closed behind them with a sound that felt final. I sank into the couch and exhaled the longest, deepest breath I'd taken in years. Danielle peeked out from the kitchen, holding 2 mugs. Coffee. I nodded. She handed one to me and smiled. "You know you handled that better than most people would." I let out a small laugh. That's the thing about people like Larry. They count on you breaking down. When you don't, it breaks them instead. Outside, the evening light poured in warm and golden, filling the empty corners that used to belong to him. For the first time, the apartment didn't feel haunted. It felt free. That was the night the mask finally cracked, I wrote later in my journal, and everyone saw who he really was. It's strange how silence can feel louder than chaos once you get used to the noise. For weeks after Larry's final stunt, the quiet felt unfamiliar, unsettling even. No more arguments echoing down the hallway, no more double-checking if the truth matched his words. Just quiet, honest quiet. But the peace didn't last entirely unbroken. 2 weeks later, I got a message from an unknown number. I almost deleted it until I saw the name at the end, from Larry Wells. The message read, "Congratulations, you win. I lost my job, I lost my friends, I lost everything. Are you happy now?" I stared at the screen for a moment. Not out of sadness, out of disbelief that even now he saw himself as the victim. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Because the truth was already doing what I never could, holding him accountable. A few days later, Julian came over with updates. Corporate's pressing charges, he said. 3,000 in falsified expense reports. He's lawyered up, but it's not looking good. I sat down slowly, letting it sink in. So it's official. Julian nodded. Officially official. Danielle walked in carrying her laptop, shaking her head. "You should see his Facebook right now. He's posting quotes about betrayal and fake people." I laughed quietly. Of course he is. The performance never stops. But the most shocking part wasn't his downfall. It was how fast everyone else started seeing through him. His friends, the ones who used to take his side, stopped replying to his posts after realizing he'd told each of them a different version of our breakup. To one, I was controlling. To another, unfaithful. And to a third, apparently I was secretly using him for money. When the contradictions stacked up, they finally stopped defending him. Even his mother, the woman who'd once accused me of being ungrateful, commented under one of his posts, "Larry, enough. Please stop lying. Get help." That comment stayed up for 3 hours before he deleted it, and then his entire account. After that, I heard through a mutual friend that he'd moved back in with his parents in another state. Part of his plea deal for corporate fraud included mandatory counseling and restitution payments. He'd officially hit rock bottom, the kind of bottom that didn't come from bad luck, but from self-destruction, carefully built one lie at a time. And me. I finally signed a new lease. My name only, my name written across the contract. The apartment was empty for a while, but I didn't rush to fill it. I liked the space, the stillness, the honesty in every echo. One evening, I adopted a cat from a rescue shelter, a small white one with green eyes and a scar above his nose. The shelter worker asked what I wanted to name him. "Truth," I said, "because he's small, quiet, and I'm never losing sight of him again." The name stuck. A few months later, I met someone new. His name was Daniel. He wasn't extraordinary, at least not in the way Larry pretended to be. He was grounded, calm, and honest to a fault. When he said he'd be late, he was late, not missing, not lying, not redefining time. We met for coffee one evening. He asked me, "So what made you give me a chance?" I smiled. "You don't try too hard to impress me." He laughed softly. That's the nicest backhanded compliment I've ever gotten. But he didn't know that for me it was the highest form of praise. Being with someone who didn't lie felt like breathing clean air after years of smoke. I'm not saying I'm fully healed. Sometimes I still catch myself double-checking small details, receipts, words, promises. But I no longer do it out of fear. I do it out of awareness. Because healing isn't pretending the fire never happened. It's learning how to walk without flinching at the smoke. And somewhere between rebuilding my life and feeding a cat named Truth, I realized something profound. Larry never destroyed me. He only exposed the parts of me that needed rebuilding, stronger, wiser, quieter. If there's one lesson I'd pass on to anyone who's lived through lies dressed as love, it's this. When someone shows you who they really are, don't argue with the mask. Don't beg them to change. Don't try to fix the story. Just walk away and let the truth move out with you. Because the most powerful revenge isn't anger, it's peace. It's silence. It's building a life so steady that the person who once shook your world couldn't even make it tremble now. As I stood on my balcony that night, looking out over the city lights, I whispered one last goodbye, not to him, but to the version of myself who once thought love could survive on excuses. And for the first time in years, the air felt still, honest, clean.